Here's a question. Is it okay to say, I don't know, in response to technical questions in an interview when you apply for a life science research position in a lab? Recently, I received this question from a student. I have also seen a similar question in an online forum, Reddit. So I would like to comment on it in this first question and answer session. Hi everyone, welcome to the Foundational Skills in Life Sciences podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Synaptologica. We discuss the skills that life science scholars learn, use, and improve throughout professional activities. Your benefit is expressed in my motto, learn the skills, enjoy academic life. First, a disclaimer. What I'm going to tell you is my personal opinion. It is possible that it does not apply to you in your own specific situation, in your program, in your own institution, and in your country. And each professor could have a different opinion. So please listen to my comment not as definitive advice, but just as a reference. I hope my comment will serve you as a starting point for your thought. Now my answer. I think it is good to say, I don't know, to some technical questions related to experiments. I prefer to hear a frank response. Let me explain my thoughts using an example situation. Some background information here. My laboratory does wet bench hands-on experiments and computer programming work to enable research and training. The applicants for a research position in my lab so far have been at various levels. They were undergraduate students, postbaccalaureate students, graduate students, postdoctoral researchers or postdocs, and research assistants or technicians. My evaluation points of the applicants are different depending on their levels. Especially the evaluation points of the postdocs will be different from the others because we assume that they have already finished the minimum training. But still, my comment today will apply to whoever applies to my lab at any level. Now the main content. In an interview, I will be an interviewer, and the interviewee is an applicant who wants a research position. I will usually ask the applicant to explain the research experience. I will ask, do you have any research experience? If the applicant says yes, then I would ask, could you explain what you did and what you learned? If the applicant does not have research experience, I would ask about any other experience, for example, hands-on laboratory procedures in a biology course. Then I would ask the same question. Could you explain what you did and what you learned? How the applicant answers this question will give me deep information about how the applicant thinks about research. What would be important aspects of an applicant to me? It is not the simple knowledge. What the applicants know beforehand will be very limited in terms of performing solid experiments and sometimes very creative experiments in my lab. Rather, it is whether the applicant thinks about a scientific question and whether the applicant tries looking for the answer. Let's suppose that the applicant has research experience, and the applicant did the same experiment as the one in our Milestone Article 1, written by the laureates of the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine 2023. This is the paper that we have been talking about in many episodes. So the applicant will answer, we introduced RNAs into immune cells and measured the inflammatory cytokines secreted from the cells. Then I will usually ask 2 lines of questions. In the first line of questions, I would say, great, why did you do the experiment? What was the hypothesis? Why is the experiment important? I will not ask those questions in a single rapid-fire format. The applicant will feel intimidated if I ask those questions consecutively without pause. Instead, I will ask them naturally and slowly as we continue our friendly conversation. Those questions are important. They are not related to technical details. I want the applicant to know the answers to these important questions, even if the applicant did not know the technical details while doing the experiments. In the second line of questions, I will go into technical aspects. I would ask, what are cytokines? How did you measure the cytokines? It is not so important to me whether the applicant knows all the names of the cytokines or the names of the measurement method. But I would like to know whether the applicant understood what the research target was and the principle of how the measurement method worked. So the applicant can say, I measured the inflammatory chemicals using ELISA. Then I would ask, oh, what is ELISA and how does it work? If the applicant stops here without knowing how to answer, that is not a good sign for me. The applicant knows a name, but the applicant has no understanding. Instead, I will prefer the applicant who can say, I measured the inflammatory chemicals using a famous method, but I forgot the name. I don't know the name now. I would ask, how does the method work? Then the applicant explains the method in plain language. In this case, the applicant might not know a specific name, but the applicant has good understanding. This means that the applicant was interested in how the experimental system worked, the applicant had the questions, and the applicant looked for the information and thought about them. This is a good sign for me. So it is okay to say, I don't know, in response to technical questions. If the applicant does not have an understanding of the goals, procedures, methods, or the results of the experiment that the applicant actually did, then it is not a good sign. But still, I would appreciate frank responses in these conversations. Why? There are two reasons. The first reason is because I prefer frank responses once the applicant starts working in my lab. If there are things that the applicant, now the lab member, does not know, the lab member can tell me so, and I can teach. If the lab member knows certain things, I can build on them and start in-depth discussions from there. Pretending to know things would be an unhealthy attitude in a lab research environment. If the lab members hide what they know and what they do not know, I will not be able to discuss with them, and I will not be able to guide them. So frank responses are the key, at least for me. The second reason for why I prefer frank responses is because the knowledge always changes in science. First of all, I do not expect the trainees at certain levels, like undergraduate and post-baccalaureate students, to know much. Even if they think they know something, it will be at a very superficial level from a research perspective. So the knowledge might not count much in doing experiments. In addition, the knowledge changes. A scientific fact, a scientific method, and a scientific theory will change. Those things change all the time. They're not a rigid knowledge system. The knowledge is dynamic. In fact, the major work of scientific research will be to change them, correct them, and improve them. So if the applicant sticks with the knowledge learned at school before, then it will affect how the science proceeds in the lab. One of my goals of training is for my trainees to realize that the knowledge is not static. So far, I have given the applicants to my lab the permission to frankly say, I don't know. But if you only say, I don't know, it will be embarrassing to you and me. So here's my practical tip. I would recommend you to add questions. After saying, I don't know, you will add something more. For example, say, what I do know is, and talk about the things you know. Then follow up by linking your prior knowledge to the thing you did not know. The simplest way is to ask questions to the interviewer. Questions can be something like, how is it different from X? How is Y related to Z? How was that found? Personally, I would like an applicant to ask me any question about the thing that I asked, say, a scientific fact, a method, and so on, irrespective of whether the applicant knew the thing or did not know the thing. These questions will do 3 good things for you. First, they will bring your understanding to a deeper level. You will feel satisfied. Second, this type of questions and thought processes will trigger interesting discussions, even during an interview. The interview will become fun and fruitful. And third, you will look thoughtful to an interviewer. These are all very good signs in my interview evaluation. In this Q&A session, I'm assuming that we are talking about some details related to experiments. But somewhere in an interview, I would also ask bigger questions that are non-technical. For example, what is your long-term goal? Then I would not like a response, I don't know. I want to hear some solid thoughts, even if they are immature. So overall conclusion is that it would be good to say, I don't know, properly. This is it for today. Your action. If you like this podcast, please share it with your friends, colleagues, mentors, or anybody who would be interested in it. This way, you and I can extend the reach. The bigger the audience becomes, the more feedback we can get, the better the episode quality will grow, and the more you and I can learn. Thank you for joining me in today's episode of Foundational Skills in Life Sciences. I'm Dr. Synaptologica. I'll see you soon. Bye for now.